something they spent years intentionally trying to destroy. Unity can only happen in a country when you have a people who agree on what the outcome should be. Well, what's up, everybody? Is it Tuesday?
It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. I mean, it's not really a happy Tuesday because this is the 2nd-year anniversary of the terrorist attack on Israel. But nonetheless, it's still Tuesday. And in case you guys haven't noticed, there's a couple changes happening around here. It is very quickly becoming hoodie season here for PatriotDad in our house. This is my uniform. I have a couple of uniforms. I'm not one of those people that like focuses on life hacks or anything like that. Like you hear people that, try to minimize the complexity of their life by buying like 12 of the exact same outfit and they only wear that. That's not me, but I am a absolute creature of habit. And I work from home. So a lot of times I don't like to get dressed. I'll wear sweatpants and I'll put a hoodie on.
That's my uniform. That's my uniform. I was going to change. I usually change before we do our podcast, and I didn't change today, so I'm just wearing a t-shirt.
SK did not change today. Yeah. So I actually have sweatpants on right now. Don't tell anybody. But it is getting to that season where it's hoodie season. I walked outside earlier today and it was like 67 degrees. Like that's hoodie season for us very warm-blooded, narrow people.
So being a transplant to the deep south, I don't even know if there is a hoodie season. I can tell you it was about 84 degrees and about 88% humidity today.
Yeah, you're probably not going to get much of a hoodie season up there or down there.
We'll see. I don't know. I'm kind of looking forward to not having to deal with it. That's why I left.
I hear you. And the other part of my uniform is, and I know YouTube and Rumble and everybody else, we are not sponsored, but I absolutely love the Patriot Gear t-shirts. They are the most comfortable t-shirts in the world. And I literally have about 12 of them in different colors. So you see me wearing those things all the time because they're the most amazing t-shirts on the planet. Can we get a technology check here? Are we live on all the places that we're supposed to be live? Because I don't know what happened last time, but I think it's probably me. I'm going to take the big L on this one. For some reason, about 9 to 10 minutes of the first part of our show on YouTube got completely cut off.
Yep.
I thought we were live, but apparently we weren't live over on YouTube. So if those of you guys who only watch us on YouTube, if you missed the first 9 minutes of last Friday's episode, go over to Rumble because it's over there. You can also go over to X, to my X account, and you can see it there. Speaking of, I need to double check to make sure that we're live on X.
I saw you pop up. I got a notification. You're good on X.
Oh, I should probably turn that off. Hold on. Yeah, we're live. We're live on X. Guys, it's working. This thing is freaking working. Happy Tuesday. How's everybody doing?
Look at us go. I'm good. Been busy researching, working on all this stuff, trying to paint the big picture and make it digestible, which is impossible for me.
Yeah, there's a lot to digest too. We've got some breaking news today. I don't know if you guys saw this or not. We actually have a show for you, believe it or not, something that we've been working on. Did you guys see the title of this episode? Did you see what it was?
Mm-hmm.
It's time for the Insurrection Act.
Yep. Well, he doesn't have a choice. President Trump does not have a choice.
I mean, they're forcing him to do it. And honestly, I think he's shown an incredible amount of restraint to not have done it already. But what we're going to do is I'm going to lay out, and Noem and SK are going to lay out the case for why, if Donald Trump does decide to pull the trigger and invoke the Insurrection Act, he is absolutely justified in doing so. Well over.
I think he's obligated. To do it.
Yeah.
He's obligated to do it. It's his responsibility to do it.
I think so. But Noem, as we were kind of in the parking lot getting ready, as kind of we were doing pre-show prep, you had brought up, I know you did a video on this right before we went live and I hadn't had a chance to see it. There's some breaking news. What's going on?
Yeah, there's some breaking news, and it has to do with disclosure summer, which apparently we're still in, even though it's getting into disclosure football season. Ukraine impeachment hoax scandal. That information is coming out. So earlier this morning when I got up, and it kind of went right over my head, you see that John Radcliffe at the CIA Director, had released intelligence that the CIA had been sitting on since immediately following Joe Biden's fateful trip out to Ukraine where he later bragged that he threatened the Ukrainian president, Victor Poroshenko, said, if you don't fire that prosecutor, I'm going to withhold the $1 billion loan guarantee, which is, by the way, the definition of a quid pro quo.
That's a quid pro quo.
The definition of a quid pro quo. And the prosecutor was a man by the name of Victor Shokin, who happened to be investigating Burisma and thereby Joe Biden's son, who had that cushy board seat at Burisma, that no-show board seat where I think, did we figure out the numbers of like $83,000 a month? Was that what he was, or was it 53?
Nope,
83.
it was 83,333, I think.
Yep.
And there were a couple that were different numbers, but I have the
Yep.
totals and everything. I can pull them up for you.
No, you don't need to. It's not a big deal. The big deal, however, is the intelligence that the CIA had gleaned following that trip from the Ukrainian government, where the entire Ukrainian government from Victor Poroshenko on down was, in their words, very bewildered over the nature of the trip that Joe Biden made out there. They thought he was coming out there to have substantial or substantive conversations with them. And instead, he gave some generic speech about corruption in government and how they have to fight harder against corruption in their government. And the reason they were flummoxed and bewildered was because everybody in the Ukraine government knew that the Biden family was engaged in corruption in Ukraine. They were blown away, the Ukrainian government. The CIA had that intelligence. The CIA knew in 2015 and 2016 that the Biden family, namely Hunter Biden, and I'm sure Jim Biden as well, were out there in Ukraine involved in pay-for-play schemes and all kinds of other corruption they sat on. In fact, that intelligence was being put together into one of the presidential daily briefs, a PDB, and the PDB briefer was actually stopped as he's getting ready to give the brief at the direction of the vice president and said, I'd prefer you don't disseminate that intelligence at all. And
Wait,
they didn't.
You
They
mean
sat on it.
the vice president's office got to determine what went in the president's daily briefing?
Yep. That's the email. I
That-
sent you those images, but you guys can find them. They're out there. It was part of John Radcliffe's dump, but that's not the good part at SK. This is going to blow your hair off. Patriot Dad already heard it. This blew me for, I mean, I went crazy. I lost my mind when I heard this. I was getting ready to work out about an hour before the show, and a new document pops up from Paul Sperry, and it says White House photos indicates, do you know who was on that trip with Joe Biden in December 7th and December 8th of 2015? Do you know what his
Hunter
name was?
Biden.
Oh no,
No,
SK.
no,
This is so
it's
much better
better.
than that.
It's better.
Guess. She
Eric?
needs to guess again. Guess again.
Guess again. Guess again.
Well,
who was on that
is
trip?
Is it something that's already known? Is he in the pictures?
Uh-huh.
I can't remember all the names, but I can see the picture like in my
Eric?
head.
Eric Ciaramella was on the trip with Joe Biden to Ukraine when he issued that quid. You know, remember who Eric Ciaramella was, right?
Nom, who is Eric Ciaramella?
He was the Ukraine whistleblower. He was the guy who made the claim that President Trump issued a quid pro quo to Zelensky saying, if you don't investigate the Biden family in Ukraine, I'm not going to give you these weapons. Eric Ciaramella was the so-called whistleblower. That, by the way, if you mentioned his name, you were going to get booted off every social media platform. You weren't
And
allowed
many
to speak
did.
the man's name.
Many
And many
did.
did get booted off. Eric Ciaramella, who was a holdover from the Obama National Security Council, was on that trip with Joe Biden when Joe Biden issued the fateful quid pro quo. And then he suddenly showed up later and he made up a whole ass, fake ass quid pro quo.
So you
Eric
mean to tell me the guy that started the entire first impeachment hoax, the Russian or the Ukrainian quid pro quo hoax, the guy that said that he was on a phone call and he overheard Donald Trump offer a quid pro quo to Zelensky to release information on Hillary Clinton and Biden. It was Biden, wasn't it? It was on the Biden. It was on the Biden.
It was Joe
family.
Biden. Yeah. It was Biden. Yeah.
The guy that claimed that a quid pro quo, an illegal quid pro quo that led to a first impeachment that cost the American people millions of dollars, actually was on a trip with Joe Biden when he actually engaged in a quid pro quo. Can I ask a question? And maybe I'm not ready.
Sure.
You had something else to say. I have an important question.
I was going to say, Yes. That's what.
Can we get some of that weaponization that we are constantly hearing about in the media and from the lunatic blue talkers on the left who are constantly complaining about Donald Trump weaponizing the Department of Justice? Can we get some weaponization, please? Trump administration, can you please weaponize and activate your Department of Justice and your FBI to put some of these freaking people in prison? Can we actually get some weaponization? I am calling for the weaponization of the Trump administration to take these people out. It is time that we weaponize accountability for these people. This is insane. Absolute insanity. SK, you look like you're fuming over there. Are you looking something up or?
Well, yeah, I was pulling up because I don't have either one of my physical copies in here. I need to be bringing my books in here. But I was pulling up the Biden report, bidenreport.com. If you haven't been there, you should. Because this information's in there and the pictures and everything that you guys are talking about is in the Biden report.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try something new this time. So we haven't done a very good job of this. We haven't done a very good job of engaging with people in the comments. One of the great things about these lives is that if you're going to continue to do these, you have to be able to engage people in the comments. And there's a bunch of people on the YouTube channel that I recognize because they, we see them all over social media. So I'm going to make a concerted effort to try to engage with you guys throughout today's episode and maybe even the comments. But so there's some people out there like Liz Can. I see her all the time. She's amazing. Aaron McCurry, who sent me a video right before we went live tonight saying, hey, you guys need to watch this because it relates to what you're going to talk about. And then I went to look at the video and it was like 20 minutes long. So I don't have time to get to that yet, but we will. But thank you guys so much for joining us live. We appreciate every single one of you. I'm going to try to do a better job of engaging with you, but I did see one comment in here that I want to address because I kicked open a hornet's nest today, and we'll eventually get to the topic tonight. I promise we'll get to it, but I kicked open the hornet's nest today. I made a video late last night, posted it this morning, basically asking the question, like, why is everybody believing the things that Candace Owens is saying? Because I've been listening to her content lately and I'm confused. Because it seems to me a lot like she has a bunch of axes to grind. She's not actually investigating and releasing information. I'm not going to get into that today. We can maybe do another podcast on that. But I saw somebody ask a question, and I've seen this quite a few times today. What are our feelings on Israel? And I just want to make this point, and anyone else that wants to jump in can make this, whatever opinion you have. But I posed this question the other day. First of all, I just want to be very clear. I absolutely support Israel's right to defend themselves and their right to go on the offense because of the people that they have surrounding them. They have absolute autonomy to do whatever they need to do to their neighbors when their neighbors are lobbing missiles and rockets and terrorist attacks into their country. But as I take a closer look at the relationship between the United States and Israel, I just have one question. Are they as good a friend to us as we are to them? I have not yet settled on that question. I don't yet have the answer for that. It's something that I'm thinking about. It's something that I am researching and I'm studying, and nobody will pressure me into making a premature decision on that. But I will say this, I have questions about whether or not they are as good of friends to the United States as the United States are to them. Period. I'll just leave it there.
Well, intelligence gathering capabilities have a lot of power driving who your friends are and whether they're actually friends or they just do what they're told. So
that's right.
That's true. And I think it's important to differentiate between the Israeli people and the Israeli government.
Of course.
I think that's important. And I mean, we don't agree with our government 100% of the time. So I don't know why anyone would agree with Israel's government 100% of the time. And that's kind of where I stand. I completely support their right to defend themselves and their right to go on the offensive. And whether or not I agree with their decisions 100% of the time, obviously not. I don't agree with Donald Trump. I support Donald Trump 100%, and I don't agree with him 100% of the time.
That's right.
So That's where I stand. And I think that our return on investment in Israel is good. I think people don't understand not only intelligence, but we get all sorts of technology, medical advancements. A lot of our medical advancements come from Israel. They literally just a couple months ago implanted the first completely artificial heart. That's all technology that comes to the United States. That's our return on investment.
That's another podcast for another day. That's an interesting topic. But anyway, nonetheless, folks, we actually have some content that we want to go through tonight. And I think it's really, really important. So again, I point you back to the headline or the title of this episode. It's time for the Insurrection Act. Has anybody been paying close attention to the language that Donald Trump has been using lately? Have you guys seen?
Yes.
He did an interview when he was standing outside of HMX-1 of a Marine helicopter, and he was being asked a bunch of questions from journalists. And I want to pull up just a very quick clip so you can see the type of language that he's starting to use, because I think this is critically important to where we're going in the very near future. And I think it explains an awful lot about where their head is. So here's Donald Trump answering a question about what we're experiencing.
Agitators, insurrectionists. All you have to do is look at the television, turn on your television, read your newspapers. It's burning to the ground.
Did you catch that? Should I play
Nope.
that again? I should play it again real quick. I'm going to play it one more
Nope.
time for you. Listen.
It's burning to the ground. You have agitators, insurrectionists. All you have to do is look at the television, turn on your television, read your newspapers. It's burning to the ground.
You have agitators and insurrectionists. SK, is that a little pig behind you, your shoulder over there? Or is that a dog? You just had this
Wait.
little white thing just walked in right behind you.
Yeah, she looks like a pig. She used to be twice the size she is. We adopted her as an elderly dog, and she was enormous, and she's lost weight and gotten a lot healthier. But yeah, that's one of my chihuahuas.
That was awesome. I
little-
just see this thing. I'm like, what on earth is that? That's a dog.
She's a little downsy. It's okay.
A little downsy. So Donald Trump is using some very, very specific, very particular language. He referred to them as agitators and insurrectionists. Do you think that's an accident, Noem?
I don't think President Trump says a lot of things that he doesn't actually mean. No.
No.
I think sometimes he says things that he thinks that he believes and that he means that he probably shouldn't say out loud, but I don't think he says much that he doesn't mean. No.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think you're right. Donald Trump never says things he doesn't mean, but a lot of times he says things that he means that he probably shouldn't have said, which I
Right.
think we all do. And that's one of the things that makes him one of the most relatable presidents in American history, is because, you know, if it comes out of his mouth, he believes it.
Yep.
So that's Donald Trump. I have another one I want to show you before we really launch into this. So this is Kristi Noem talking about the circumstances that we are living in today in America.
They're getting more and more people on their team as far as attacking officers, and they're making plans to ambush them and to kill them. We have specific officers and agents that have bounties that have been put out on their heads. It's been $2,000 to kidnap them, $10,000 to kill them. They've released their pictures. They've sent them between their networks, and it's an extremely dangerous situation and unprecedented.
I don't know if you caught that, but the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security just outlined intelligence that they have of a widespread, organized, funded campaign to kidnap and assassinate federal agents.
Yeah. Well, the one guy that they actually arrested for it was a high up in was it Sinaloa cartel, if I'm not mistaken, up in Chicago. And he did put out, I believe it was on a Snapchat. He said $2,000 for information on where the guy, and it's I can't remember the guy's, it's the guy who's in charge, like Bativa or whatever the heck his name is. The guy that's in charge, $2,000 for information on his whereabouts, and $10,000 if you just kill him. Yeah. So that's where we are. That's where the foreign terrorist organization, drug cartel members are inside our country. And they're actually inside of our cities. And what magically is now an ICE-free zone, if you can imagine that. You've got drug cartel members in Chicago, and Pritzker and Johnson are protecting them. Shocker.
Well, which in and of itself is a major problem. So
Mhm.
the other night I came across on X, I came across this video of Kristi Noem detailing out the intelligence that they have. And then right after that, I saw the video of Donald Trump outside the helicopter using the term insurrectionist. And immediately my mind went to, holy crap, we just literally saw all of the justification we need for the Insurrection Act. So I decided to go out and do a little bit of research because I wanted to fully understand, what does the Insurrection Act actually mean? Because you hear people talk about this all the time. You hear the radical left talk about it all the time. It's been talked about for years. This person's gonna invoke it. Trump's gonna invoke it. But what does it mean? What is the Insurrection Act? So I pulled up just a very quick definition of it so we can start from here. So the Insurrection Act of 1807 is a U.S. federal law that allows the president to deploy military forces domestically to suppress insurrections, rebellions, or domestic violence under specific conditions. If the president activates the Insurrection Act, several key actions and consequences may follow, depending on the context and the scope of the deployment. So the president has wide latitude in terms of defining or determining whether or not the justification is there for the Insurrection Act. And he also gets to define the parameters or the type of engagement of the Insurrection Act. It can be very limited. It can be very widespread. It just depends on the circumstances. So what I want to do over the next couple minutes is lay out what I believe is the case and the justification for being well beyond the point in which the Insurrection Act could have been invoked. SK, you're looking at me like you got something to add to that.
No, I'm just sitting here thinking about all the stuff I found back in April and in June in these protest groups, and especially like in March, April time period, the things that they were pushing to the protesters and what they were encouraging them to do and why. And this plays into that. And they were claiming that Project 2025 lays out that Donald Trump would come into office and he would use the Insurrection Act in order to implement martial law. And it's going to happen regardless of what they do. So they need to go out there and they need to go all out. That's how they've been encouraging them, is by telling them it doesn't matter what they do. This is what Donald Trump is going to do. So that's the narrative the left has been being fed this entire time, encouraging them and getting them worked up. And then when he started calling National Guard in LA, they started posting in the protest groups. I put one in the Dropbox from June that was in a protest group, and it literally says exactly what I just laid out. There's a whole article from like February, March, April, somewhere in there. But that screenshot I have is from a post in a protest group in June during the LA protests. Yep, that one. Before the few come out and try to convince you not to escalate, remember the Insurrection Act being weaponized to declare martial law has not only already been frequently discussed by the current administration, it's literally written in their Project 2025 textbook. It's coming regardless. Your actions in standing up to ICE/the Gestapo is not only the most patriotic and American thing you could do, but it should be happening all across the country. That's what we must remember. We outnumber this government and their Nazi proud boys, and it terrifies them. Give them hell. This is from June, during the LA protests in June. And this is what they've been being fed since right after Trump took office. And fun fact, Project 2025 doesn't mention the Insurrection Act or martial law once.
Well, of
No,
course not. But
does
the People's Guide does.
Project 2025 does.
There you go.
Yeah.
The propaganda from Mark Elias and Democracy
It's almost
Forward.
like
That's absolute. You might as well drop propaganda leaflets on LA that said, "Hey, the Marines are coming. Get out and fight them." I mean, they might as well have done that.
Yep.
It's almost like that piece of propaganda was intentionally inserted into the People's Guide for Project 2025 for a reason.
Yep, that this is part of the color revolution. And I've been telling you guys, the countries and people behind the color revolution that's taking place right now in our country is China, Venezuela, Cuba, the cartels, and Iran and Iran's proxies. That's what's happening right now. They're all working together, even though they have different goals. The one thing they have in common is they want the United States to completely crumble and they want chaos. And this is part of it. And the fact that you said the Sinaloa cartel is issuing basically hits on federal agents, that
It's
this
not.
is
It's
it.
not just them. It's not just them. It's coming from Antifa as well. And all of those organizations are closely connected. I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but Representative Anna Paulina Luna last night gave an interview in which she, SK, this is, I don't know how you feel about this, but she had indicated that they now have evidence that that the guy who funded some of the early anti-immigration riots back in the spring, what's his name, Neville Singham,
Roy.
is also involved in funding the Armed Queers SLC. So they apparently have a direct link between the earlier protest, that guy in China funding Armed Queers SLC. And I'm sure you probably already found that.
Yeah, a long time ago. It's not
Yeah.
just the armed queers. It's literally every protest that's been taking place. There are you can look at the protest flyers and they put like logos of all of the organizations that are organizing the protest. And if you see Answer Coalition, PSL, Code Pink, what's the other one? There's several that are all intertwined with Roy Singham. And he, fun fact, lives full time in Shanghai, and he shares office space and employees with a CCP media company. And he's married to Jody Evans, the founder of Code Pink.
That's right. So Aaron McMurray in the comments over on YouTube says, how do they stop this? Well, this is how they stop it.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is how Donald Trump has the tools. Go ahead.
Yeah. They have to invoke the Insurrection Act because, one, they've got to get these illegal immigrants out of this country. They have to, because we don't know what's hiding in these millions and millions of them. They have to get that out of here. One, that they do for the safety and the security of our country. And two, because they promised they were going to do it. They have to invoke the Insurrection Act, because if it wasn't illegal immigration and these deportations that was happening, they would be scouring the police blotters to find any incident they can to have another riot and create another BLM moment anywhere in any city that they can find it. They don't care what the incident or what the issue is. They care about the riot. They care about the color revolution. They'll find an issue. He's got to crush it. He has to.
Well, and they told us that. They telegraphed it by the fact that they're saying they are going to use the Insurrection Act in order to bring martial law without any real justification for using the Insurrection Act. Tells you what their plan was. It was to create the conditions where you have to use the Insurrection Act, because the president can't just invoke the Insurrection Act without justification. No. And I'm going to show you that there's actual conditions that have to be met in order for the Insurrection Act to be invoked. It's not something that he can just wave a magic wand and say, I decide that I want to invoke the Insurrection Act and send a bunch of military into, I don't know, some town in Alabama for no reason. He has to have justification for it. So the way to get him to do that is to create the justification for it.
Yep. Real quick before you move on, I do want to make a correction. Boggs Clan over there on Rumble. It wasn't the Sinaloa cartel. It was Latin Kings, the guy that they arrested. Yeah, it was Latin Kings. So I want to make sure that we're accurate. Thank you for that, Boggs Clan. You're right.
See, sometimes as we're doing this, we're pulling stuff together. We're not always right all the time. But one thing about this group is we will always correct our mistakes. Always. Unlike this idiot propagandist who decided to immediately try to accuse conservatives of being responsible for burning a judge's house down in South Carolina, and have yet to take down their post about it.
Oh, they're still there.
Yeah. They're still there.
Yeah.
They're still there.
Including the media.
Oh, yeah. Not only the media, but Dan Goldman, a sitting member of Congress, is the one who started the controversy, and it's still there.
You guys, Dan Goldman is a snake. He's the one that did the testimony prep with Michael Cohen before he was the star witness in the hush money case. And he was simultaneously paying the judge's daughter for consulting services during that entire time.
Unbelievable. This guy
disgusting.
All right. So what happens if the Insurrection Act is in fact invoked? Well, it's pretty simple. It gives Donald Trump pretty wide authority to deploy federal troops. So the president can deploy active duty military forces or federalized National Guard units to address the situation, whatever the situation is. These forces can be used to restore order, suppress violence, or enforce federal law when local or state authorities are unable or unwilling to do so. That is the most important component of what the Insurrection Act gives the president the authority to do. It's to enforce federal law when local and state authorities are unable or unwilling to do it.
Yeah. I mean,
Because-
just in layman's terms, it is the supremacy clause. Federal law will be enforced here, and you states are not going to obstruct, impede us from doing it. The citizens of your state aren't going to do it. The elected representatives of your state aren't going to do it. And if you force us to, we will bring in the military to ensure that federal law is enforced. Period. That's the supremacy clause, and that's what that's there to support.
Exactly.
Right.
And what is the function of the executive branch of government? What is the main function of the executive branch of government?
To take
Law
care
enforcement.
that laws are enforced.
To enforce the federal laws.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
right.
None of
And
this
by
is
the
difficult.
way, the president is the source of authority to do all of that. According
he
to
is
Article
the
2.
chief law enforcement officer, and he is the chief magistrate of this entire country. Nobody else is. It's not Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi gets her power from him. Period.
That's right. That's right. And did you see her wielding that power, wrecking Democrats all over the dais today?
I want to
mean,
do a video. I just want to do a whole podcast on her. It was so good.
It's almost like she went in there with a list. Do you guys remember? Oh, you probably haven't seen it. But anyway, so long story short, there is this this ministry video that I watched years ago of this pastor talking about telling the story about Jesus writing in the sand when he's at, and he's, you know, he's got the guys who are threatening to stone the woman who was in adultery, and he's writing down in the sand like all the things that they have done and all the sins in their life, and he's looking at them like, you know, accusatory. That is the impression I had of Pam Bondi today, as she's hearing them criticize her and the president, and she's just writing in the sand all the crimes and the sins that they have been hiding from the American people, and just looking at them like, really? You want to talk about this? Okay. We should do a show on that. Maybe we should do a special on Pam Bondi and how she wrecked these people. All right. So what I want to talk about next is probably the most important part of this podcast. What are the conditions for activation or invoking the Insurrection Act? There's three main scenarios. The first one is insurrection against the government. Basically, when when a group engages in rebellion or insurrection against the United States, preventing the execution of federal law. That's a key. Insurrection against the government for the purpose of preventing the execution of federal law. The second one is domestic violence or unlawful obstruction. When widespread violence or lawlessness in a state hinders the enforcement of federal or state laws and local authorities cannot manage it. And then the third one is a request by a state. If a governor or state's governor or legislator, if a state's governor or legislature requests federal assistance to suppress an insurrection or domestic violence. So I've got all of the justification that we're going to go through for each one of these bullet points to make what I think is a very firm case that we are well beyond the threshold to do that. But before we do, any comments?
No.
All right. So let's go here. We're going to go after it. All right. Let me get my outline. I have an outline because I want to make sure I go through this. So I want to start with the first one, insurrection against the government for the purposes of preventing the execution of federal law. Did you guys see the mayor of Chicago come out today or yesterday, one of these days, in the last 2 days, and effectively established ICE-free zones?
Is the mayor of Chicago still Beetlejuice?
No, not Lori Lightfoot. It's Brandon Johnson. He's worse. Believe it or not. So I've got a mentor that I've worked with for many, many years. He lives in like downtown, the posh kind of part of Chicago. And he was like, oh, don't worry. Oh, we can do worse than Mayor Lightfoot because they do it every single time. And they did.
Oh, yeah.
Brandon Johnson.
Yeah, they can. And here's worse, because this guy's a full-fledged Marxist. So this is Brandon Johnson.
And he's not particularly smart either.
At reining in this out-of-control administration, the order establishes ICE-free zones. That means that city property and unwilling private businesses will no longer serve as staging grounds for these raids.
How many laws did this idiot just break by doing this?
I'm not sure that he broke any. I mean, it's city property and private businesses. There's all he's saying is you can't actually like stage your equipment here and be a launching off point. He didn't say, what I didn't hear from that is that ICE cannot enter these buildings because that won't fly. So I don't know. I'm not sure that there's much in that.
I beg to differ.
Oh,
I beg
well,
to
correct
differ.
me.
I actually think he is in violation of several laws and clear violation of the Constitution in terms of the supremacy clause. So I found this over on X, and I went out and did a little bit of research on this, and I agree with Dutch. The first one, the supremacy clause, the Immigration and Nationality Act, 8 USC 1373, and potentially 18 USC 1505 for obstruction of justice. And providing actual justification, at least one piece of justification for invoking the Insurrection Act, based on the criteria of insurrection against the government for the purpose of prohibiting the execution of federal law, because that's exactly what he's doing. He is creating sanctuary spaces inside of a sanctuary state to prevent the federal government from doing their job.
Right. And when these debates first started happening, I said that I fully stood with a city or a state's right not to like use their federal tax dollars to assist in enforcing federal law. Like they can choose to do that. But I think the issue is when they outright refuse, like when they're calling for help and you hear them say, we're not sending any resources to help these people like they did in LA, like they've done in Chicago, like they've done in some of these cities. I think that's when the federal government should say, okay, well then we're bringing in the National Guard because we have to have protection for our federal officers and our federal property. And that's it, period. Like the president has the power to do that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think that's completely accurate because that is the state essentially saying that we are unwilling to help you put down the obstruction that's happening that's preventing you from enforcing federal law. Where my point of contention here is that executive order that he mentioned with the ICE-free zones is that he's not saying we're not going to put down the uprising that's occurring, that's obstructing you from doing this. They're saying you can't use our property to launch off your campaigns. I'm not sure that one passes the smell test. We're going to have to keep going.
Oh, I'm not done.
Okay,
There's a whole lot
Good.
more.
Yeah, I don't think
Because-
that one rises to the level of insurrection.
Oh no, but
And-
we'll
and
wait till
private
we get to
property,
the
and private
next.
property, right.
We'll wait till we get to the next section, because a lot of what's going on in Chicago is not necessarily as much about insurrection against the government by public officials, like we're going to see when we start looking at Portland, but instead it's more about domestic violence and unlawful obstruction, and in some cases leaving federal agents out to fend for themselves in the midst of a terrorist attack, which we saw on 2 occasions in Chicago. But let's go over to Portland, Oregon, shall we? Who wants to go over to Portland, Oregon?
Nobody
So-
wants to go to freaking Portland, Oregon, ever. Smells like piss.
For any
Shit.
reason.
Oh, do you know why it
and
smells like piss?
firecrackers. Because they littered with homeless people who pissing all over themselves. That's why.
Well,
New York
that
City's the same.
and because law enforcement are literally allowing protesters to throw cups of urine
Yep.
on other people.
No, that's just a
Like they're literally
biological
allowing them
attack,
to
man.
do that.
That's not healthy.
I mean, no, and look, I have a video.
Actually a crime.
I'll show
Sorry.
you.
It's actually a crime.
This is a video of a protester throwing a cup of urine on a journalist.
So right here.
There's no police.
We need to see that again, real quick.
There was a fucking marathon.
So right here.
There's no police.
Did you guys
There's
see
no
that?
police. Yeah, at the end of it, there's no police. Who's going to help them?
Well, and the bigger problem is not that there's no police, but the police are allowing them to do it.
Mhm.
How many times did they pee in that container to get that amount of
They
urine?
probably all did.
probably all did.
Stood there in a circle, and you have to understand. I've said this
Ugh.
before, right? These are very weird people. Antifa is 90% white male at various stages of transitioning to pretend like they're female, right? There's a whole continuum of who these people are. So they probably all stood there with their different scales of trying to mutilate their bodies, sword fought into that same cup just to get enough to throw it in that man's face. That's just a biological attack, in my opinion.
Yeah,
That's a crime.
That's a
crime. That's disgusting.
biohazard.
Yeah, that's a crime. That's disgusting.
It's assault. But the bigger problem
That's
is
assault.
that the Portland Police Department is now being credibly accused of actually protecting Antifa and
Mhm.
going after journalists and citizens in that city who are not part of Antifa. So I think you guys have probably all heard the stories, and I can't remember her name. What's the journalist's name that was recently assaulted by an Antifa?
Is it Katie?
Katie
Yeah.
Davis Court. Yeah, Katie Davis
So-
Court. I'm trying to get her to come and talk to us, by the way.
So Katie Davis Court was assaulted by a member of Antifa with a flagpole and walked away with pretty significant facial injuries. And just the other night, Nick Sorter, who is may not be how you pronounce his name, but Nick Sorter, who is a pretty influential X account, an investigative journalist, was on the ground in Portland and was targeted by law enforcement after being attacked by Antifa and arrested over it. And as a result of Nick's arrest, because the Department of Justice got involved, Harmeet Dillon got involved, because it is a clear violation of his civil rights to arrest a journalist who was there simply for journalism. They received an email from an executive or somebody high up in the Portland Police Department that we're going to talk about because this is important. Go ahead, SK. You're going to say something.
No, I was just sitting there trying to remember exactly what that memo said that he didn't commit a crime.
Said who didn't
Do
commit
you-
a crime? Nick? Or
Yes. Is this the memo where it's internal communication between Portland officials saying he didn't commit a crime?
so what this is it talks about well, let me just read this. So this is talking about Nick Sorter and oh no, I'm sorry, this is not. This is a another memo that was released or an email that was released that talks about the accusations that the Portland Police Department were protecting Antifa and targeting journalists and civilians in Portland. And I want you to hear what the Portland Police Department indicated as their justification for the way that they handle these situations. It says these three counter protesters, and it's important to note that they're referring to journalists as counter protesters. Journalists are now considered counter protesters, according to the Portland Police Department. These three counter protesters continue to be a chronic source of police and medical calls at ICE. Despite repeated advice from the officers to stay away from ICE crowd, they constantly return and antagonize the protesters until they are assaulted or pepper sprayed. The Portland Police Department is saying that journalists who are being assaulted by Antifa are the problem. It's almost like saying, because you are dating somebody who beats you, you are the problem.
Or maybe you shouldn't have worn that and you wouldn't have gotten raped.
That's the justification. It goes on and says they refuse or are reluctant to walk away from these confrontations, even when the police are in the area trying to meet with them. They even engage in the same trespassing behavior on federal and trolley property as the main protesters. So because they are in the same vicinity as the Antifa violent radical crowd, they're the ones responsible for their own assault.
But how else are you going to cover a protest? If you're press, it's like being at war. If you're at war, the press is literally right there with the people that are fighting. If you are a press and you're covering a protest, you have to be with the protesters.
Well,
but that's the point, right? That's the entire point. They don't want the press, they don't want the cameras there while Antifa is attacking these federal buildings. So without people like Katie Davis Court, Nick Sorter, and Andy No. Without them there, there's one other woman I can't pronounce her name. It's got a very French last name. Without them in the streets, these people would be lobbing actual projectiles. They would be lobbing Molotov cocktails. They would be lobbing. They would be shooting commercial grade fireworks. And if they could actually get their hands on military grade mortars and other explosives, they'd be using them. The only reason they're not is because people like Katie Davis Court and Andy No and them are actually standing out there recording what they're doing. But the Portland PD is like, hey, we don't want you there either, because they tacitly approve of it.
Well, and I think it's even worse than that. So we saw on Friday, we saw a federal district court judge, who, by the way, was actually nominated by the Trump administration back in 2019 and was placed on that circuit court out on the West Coast, issued a temporary restraining order on Donald Trump's plan to activate the National Guard in Oregon. And her justification for it was that local officials were making claims that it really wasn't that bad. So my contention is that part of the reason why the police department does this and considers journalists to be agitators and counter protesters and responsible for their own assaults is so that they can provide cover for local officials and state officials who say, well, we don't really need the National Guard here because it's really not that bad. And the only reason they could say it's not that bad is because they're not allowing journalists close enough to actually see how bad it is.
Right. And they're also not arresting anybody. They're not actually enforcing even their state or their city ordinance there either. That's kind of the entire point. So it sounds to me like the police department, the elected officials in Portland and in Oregon, as well as, so they're doing everything they can to make sure that what Antifa is doing is not known well enough to make the case that the Insurrection Act can be activated or invoked.
I have a question really quick. Does any of this remind you at all of the Biden administration when you had Texas begging the Biden administration to enforce federal law and the Biden administration was refusing? This seems like the opposite of that. Like Trump is trying to enforce federal law and the Democrats are saying you're not enforcing laws here. We don't do laws.
But could you just imagine the temerity of the Biden administration saying the border's closed? Oh, by the way, do not put that fence up because that's a federal role only. That's only for the federal. That's federal law. It's not a state activity. Don't put it up. But hey, the border's secure. These people, they were retarded. I'm sorry, I hate to say that word.
Well, I mean, I grew up. I was a teenager in the 90s. It's just part of the
me
vernacular.
too.
But also, you have to remember we have Supreme Court precedent on this because the Supreme Court ruled that the executive branch of government has the power to enforce or not enforce federal law, even if a state is begging them for help because it's straining the state. The federal government, the executive branch of government, has the power to enforce or not enforce federal law. So Donald Trump has the power to enforce federal law regardless.
Not only that, but he has the obligation. And this is the fundamental difference. In the case of Texas versus the Biden administration, Texas doesn't have any mechanism to force the Biden administration to do their job. There's no state level insurrection act that they can invoke against the executive. That is not the case when it comes to the federal government demanding that states enforce federal law. He has the statutory authority through the Insurrection Act to do it. So, but the problem in Portland is, though, it's not just a situation of the police protecting Antifa from journalism. They're also protecting them from their own citizens. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but here's a video of a Portland Police Department threatening to arrest somebody in a car for driving too close to Antifa. For driving too close. If I can get it to play. Yep, it's coming. Come on. Is it going to play? Oh, come on. Or maybe it'll come up. Anyway, nonetheless, there is a... Here we go.
Do not go to the crowd of people. If you go to this crowd of people, you will be stopped and arrested. Thank you. Do not try to play that game with me right now. Man, do not play that game with me right now. We're not going to a crowd of people in this car. Back it up and take a left. If you go to this crowd of people, you will be arrested. Ma'am, I am telling you, if you go to this crowd of people, you will be arrested. Get out of my way. I'll take care of it. Get out of my way. I'll take care of everything. You're not going to take care of it. I'll take care of it.
All right, you get the point. A Portland Police Department threatening to arrest an elderly woman in her car for driving too close to Antifa. I don't know about you, but that sounds an awful lot like insurrection against the government for the purposes of preventing the execution of federal law and unlawful obstruction. But I got more, because this isn't just a local law enforcement issue or a city official issue. I firmly believe that we have been engaged in a judicial insurrection in this country since the minute that Donald Trump stepped foot into office. An absolute insurrection. So there was a study done between May 1st and I think it was June 27th. And they looked at all of the court cases that were filed against the Trump administration. And do you guys want to take a wild guess how many of those or what percentage of those were issued immediate temporary restraining orders?
89%.
91%.
I was close.
91% of the cases that were filed against the Trump administration by these radical left-wing organizations like Mark Elias and Norm Eisen and all of their organizations, 91% of those were given immediate temporary restraining orders. You understand that a temporary restraining order is only supposed to be given if they believe that is more than likely than not that their case is going to be successful?
It also has to do with irreparable harm. There has to be a threat of irreparable harm. The problem is they're issuing injunctions in places where the irreparable harm could actually be the American people or the administration.
There's been a clear, you can make a very clear case. And we saw this immediately when Donald Trump was reelected. We saw Norm Eisen on MSNBC and other talking head shows bragging about their plan of rolling out 100 lawsuits in the first 100 days. So the Trump administration had a 100-day plan. The left had a 100-day lawfare campaign that they were getting ready to wage. And Norm Eisen has been successful in waging that lawfare campaign. And it would not have been successful had not these judges, these lower court, circuit court judges, these district court judges been willing to approve 91% of the request for injunction. And how many of those were successful in the long run? Almost none of them. Almost all of those cases were thrown out or overturned, or the Supreme Court even had to step in and say, you can't do this. And they put narrow framework in place on what has to happen if they're going to issue a nationwide injunction.
Yep. They have to have a class action suit in order to.
And not only did the Supreme Court say you can't do this, then they went ahead and did it anyway, over and over and over again. After the Supreme Court has already said you can't do this. You can't do this.
Well, and they did it again this weekend. They did it again this weekend. So Donald Trump had announced that he was going to call up the Oregon National Guard. I think he was going to bring up 200 or 300 of them. And so the governor of Oregon and I think the mayor of Portland filed a federal lawsuit asking for relief to block the Trump administration from doing it. And wouldn't you know, a federal judge went ahead and granted the restraining order. But I have a little bit of details on this that I want to talk through real quick, because I saw this post over on X, and I think it's important that we understand what happened through that scenario. Let's see if I can find, maybe I don't have it nonetheless. Anyway, so the time frame from when the judge was assigned the case and when it was actually adjudicated was like 2 days. So this judge apparently had ample opportunity to deeply investigate and review the case and issue a temporary restraining order. But what's the problem with that, SK? What's the problem with the judge blocking the deployment of National Guard on the West Coast?
Well, number one, the president has the power depending on the circumstances. But number two, the irreparable harm situation. I mean, if federal agents and federal property are being attacked, irreparable harm could be suffered by the federal government, and there's no irreparable harm at risk immediately to the city or the state for calling the National Guard.
Well, how about the fact that the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals already ruled back in June of 2025 that the president has statutory authority to call up the National Guard?
Yep.
Like, this has already been reviewed by an appeals court. So you have a lower court district judge who is operating under a current ruling at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals saying the president has the authority to do that. And she just ignored him. She just flat out ignored him. And I'm going to show you, we have the ruling here. I'm going to show you a quick snip of what the Ninth Circuit Court actually said in that ruling. I think this is it. And I don't know if it sounds like a herd of elephants are flowing through my house upstairs, but I think my daughter is up there dancing, which is great because she's an incredible dancer. But I'm going to have to send my wife a text and tell them to stop it. Anyway, so here's what the Ninth Circuit Court said. And their ruling, which, if you remember correctly, this comes out of Gavin Newsom suing Trump to stop him from deploying the National Guard in LA. Well, this is what the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals says. They approve affording the president that deference. The panel concluded that it was likely that the president lawfully exercised his statutory authority under 12-4063, which authorizes federalization of the National Guard when the president is unable with the regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. Like that's the current ruling on this issue from the appeals court.
Yep. And that's, I mean, that's clear, but that's happening all over. That's happening all over the place. So these federal district court judges are just ignoring. I mean, how many times have they done the same thing when the Supreme Court? I mean, they did it with the universal injunction, or the nationwide injunction. They continue to still do it.
Yeah.
But she didn't stop there. Sorry, SK. Go ahead. I'll
No,
finish.
I was just going to say that this case is still ongoing in the appeals court. Gavin Newsom hasn't appealed this decision to the Supreme Court, and this happened in June. They know they're not going to win. They're just trying to tie things up and get injunctions for as long as they can.
That's exactly the point. But she didn't stop. Because what the Trump administration did immediately is they said, well, you may not have noticed, but the order that you just issued a temporary restraining order on was only for Oregon National Guard. So instead, we're going to bring California National Guard and Texas National Guard into Portland to work around it. So this judge, who, by the way, should be operating under a current ruling from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, called them back in and extended her restraining order to block all National Guard.
Now I'm curious. Did the governor of Oregon or the state of Oregon, did they ask the judge to call them back in, or did she unilaterally say, "Hey, come back in here because I didn't go far enough"? Do we know?
I don't know the answer to that, but she clearly said, "Come back in here because I didn't go far enough," and I think she even called it an end around.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Let me ask you this, and we'll just kind of land the plane on this topic. How is that not an insurrection against the government for the purposes of preventing the execution of federal law through judicial insurrection, through local law enforcement, state official insurrection?
Go ahead, SK, because I've had some thoughts. Go ahead.
It's a judicial coup, and I think financing is important. I think you need to look at the financing and see who's been pulling the strings on a lot of these things that are taking place. Because again, it's all the same people, all the same financing, going to all the same cities, states, at every level. Even your local level of government is being funded in part by some of these organizations that are also tied to foreign governments. And some of these organizations are actually wanting a revolution.
Yeah. So I think in Portland, you've probably met the bar to invoke the Insurrection Act. You've got violence and riots and obstruction and attacks daily going on. I mean, this isn't like a random pop-up event. This has been consistent in Portland for, last I heard, it was 80 days. Now it's probably closer to 90 days, and they did it before. So this is a tactic that Antifa and the street thugs use, and they now have the support of peers by the local police department and the mayor and the governor, and President Trump's attempts to call up the National Guard to quell it are being blocked by a district court judge, ignoring a higher court's ruling on the issue. In doing so, I think you probably met the bar to invoke the Insurrection Act there, where there's very, very minimal judicial review allowed when the Insurrection Act is invoked.
That's right.
It's very, very minute. Right.
That's right.
Yes. And I think it's important to state that when the judge issued her temporary restraining order against the Trump administration, it was a 31-page opinion. She said the protests have been mostly peaceful. And then she literally goes on to describe incidents of violence.
Yeah.
It is the
Mostly
craziest
peaceful.
thing I've
Where have we heard
Here we go.
mostly peaceful before?
BLM.
This is insane. All right, so we're running out of time. I want to keep going. We're going to do rapid fire here because I'm not done making the case yet. So you guys probably heard about this. We heard about the terror attack in Chicago, where Chicago PD were requested to assist federal agents who were being surrounded.
Direction. Have them stay put 2 or 3 blocks away, all right? Have them hold tight until I give you further direction, please.
Okay, 10-4, MPD units responding to 39th Police in Kedzie per 999. If you guys can just, for the units responding to 39th and Police in Kedzie, if you guys can start heading there as quick as you can, and then just hold tight for instructions with 999.
999.
999.
For the Chief of Patrol, clear everybody up. We're not responding over there.
Radio check. And again, per the Chief of Patrol, we have all the units that, per 999, Chief of Patrol said all units clear out from there. We're not sending anybody over to that location.
62, we're going to clear out as soon as we can, Spot. We're like locked in over here, so we're going to do the best we can to get out of here as soon as we can.
That was a police dispatch line when federal agents were calling for help after being surrounded by 10 vehicles, one of them, at least one of them, occupied by a woman who just a few days prior to that had released information about ICE agents on her social media and doxed them, showed up with a loaded firearm, rammed her vehicle into federal agent SUVs, surrounded them. It was to the point where federal agents had to defensively shoot their way out because their lives were in danger. And when Chicago Police Department were called in to assist, they were ordered to stand down.
Yeah. First of all, police force to police force, that's disgusting. And I have a feeling that Chief of Patrol is probably in some pretty big trouble. I haven't heard any sort of reconciliation on what happened after the superintendent of the Chicago Police Department gave his little press conference yesterday where he was tap dancing as hard as he could to try to get out of this trouble. I haven't heard any sort of reconciliation on that, but I can tell you all of these state and local police departments, almost all of their funding comes from the federal government. Almost all of their capabilities, all of the partnerships that they're always thanking each other for, they come from the federal government. I think that the federal government and that spigot has to be cut off to places like that, in my opinion.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I think if you're receiving federal funding, there are always strings attached. And in order to receive federal funding, you have to be following federal law. If an agency isn't following civil rights, the Civil Rights Act, they're not going to get funding. Why is this any different?
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
That's right.
I agree with that. Chicago Police Department should feel some very significant pain after that. That's absolutely disgusting what they did to those federal agents left in there. They could have all ended up dead.
Well,
Disgusting.
and here's exactly what this looks like. So you guys may have seen this. I know the music is kind of adding a different ambiance, but what you're watching is actually a second event in Chicago where federal agent vehicles were being rammed by somebody, being targeted by a quote-unquote protester. Bottom line, folks, is that these agents are under attack by an organized, funded, widespread network of agitators and insurrectionists. But it's not just on the ground either. And we're going to rapid fire this here, try to get through it. But Noem, you're getting ready to say something.
I was getting ready to say, I mean, when you piece these events together, see, it's what people don't really think about is, yeah, I mean, that's an isolated event. That's an isolated event. No, I mean, every single one of those vehicles are very likely out of commission now, right? So, I mean, the escalation when you bring all of these individual isolated events together is a concerted effort to stop and inhibit their ability to actually serve their federal warrants and their federal immigration detainers. That's all this is. This is all a way to keep them from doing their job as federal agents. That is the definition, in my opinion. If the Chicago PD, the mayor, nobody will help them and protect them while they're doing their job as a federal agent, that rises to the level of invoking the Insurrection Act. I mean, it's in black and white right there.
Yes, and just real quick, I think it's important for everyone to understand that when ICE is executing warrants, they aren't always just executing warrants to arrest illegal aliens. They are serving warrants for human trafficking, drug trafficking, money
In most
laundering.
cases, that's what they're doing.
Almost every single one. So these people are trying to stop people from rescuing children that are being used for all sorts of horrific things, including slave labor, including, other kind of trafficking. There's a whole list of things, and people need to understand that when they're going out there thinking they're doing something good to protect their illegal neighbor, that's not what this is about. You guys are impeding them going in and raiding actual criminal organizations.
That's right. I want to show you this real quick, and then I've got a bunch of photos I want to flip through. This is just one example of what this effort looks like nationwide.
The music festivals, Hole Punch, ICE. They want you to stop dancing permanently. How about you make them stop dancing permanently? Hole Punch, ICE.
So I don't know about you, but maybe tell me, do you think that sounds like, I know SK's laughing because that guy's a freaking joke. He's a beta for sure. If we can even call it.
That's not even a beta. That's not even a beta. We know what that is. Come on.
Is there another one? Anyway, nonetheless,
it's
but
a Charlie or Delta.
This is all over social media. You can't go anywhere on social media without seeing that. You can't. And I don't know about you, but that sounds an awful lot like unlawful obstruction and domestic violence, or at least calls for it.
Well, those are just threats of violence, and the FBI should be able to and can be handling that. I mean, they're freaking everywhere, but they're getting. This all comes from the top. We see when you've got the candidate for Attorney General in the state of Virginia who has said all the things that he said, and we found out today that cops need to get killed. So maybe they won't shoot people. This all comes from the very top. And then they give it tacit approval. They give permission to these fucking morons all over TikTok and Instagram to think, hey, you know what? Maybe there's onto something. Maybe we should kill federal agents.
Reread my outline because that's exactly where I was going next.
No, I crashed out so hard today on this stuff. The fatigue that I'm feeling dealing with these mental midgets, these fucking clown asses. I'm so over them. In fact, I don't want to share space with them anymore. How do we get rid of them too?
I'm cracking up over here. Number one, I don't understand. These people don't realize what they're asking for. These people saying, get the cordless hole punch, like I'm waiting for a hair flip. And they don't understand that there are like 9-year-old children that 100% are more efficient and accurate and well-trained than they are. They have no idea what they're asking for. They don't have a single clue.
Well, this is exactly why armed queers exist. This is the reason why Armed Queers SLC and organizations like the John Brown Gun Club and Antifa radicals are arming themselves so that they can be more proficient. Because they want to move from live action role playing with styrofoam swords and cardboard shields to actually engaging in an armed kinetic conflict. That is their strategy. So real quick. So this here is a post from a guy named Mark Bray, who apparently is a professor, and he happens to be one of the leading advocates for Antifa. And
Financiers.
He wrote the guide.
He's a financiers.
Rutgers.
He wrote the book.
Rutgers.
He wrote the book. Yeah.
Rutgers wrote the book on Antifa.
He wrote the Antifa handbook.
He's a college university. He's a professor. He's teaching people this stuff. But you know where he went?
He fled.
What
He's
happened?
fleeing Spain.
He left. He went to Spain when Donald Trump designated Antifa as a terror organization. He sent out instructions to the network to get to work, and then he got on a plane and got the hell out of here because he's a puss. He's a wuss.
Well,
but that's not all.
Yeah.
That's not all. All right, we're going to go through this really quickly because I think it's important that you guys see some of these images. So this right here is a congressional candidate for, a candidate for the House of Delegates in the state of Virginia, who even after finding out the most horrific, disgusting things that Jay Jones has said about Republicans and wanting to see them shot and their kids die in front of them and law enforcement executed, she stands with him. And by the way, did you notice that she's a human rights defender?
Mm-hmm. Do you know who else stood with them?
Tim
you know
Kaine.
who else was? Tim Kaine did. Tim Kaine. Hillary Clinton's running mate. You know, the woman who's basically started all of this with the basket of irredeemables and deplorables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got one more, and then we'll wrap it up. Two more. So do you guys remember this guy?
Oh, Keith Ellison. Yeah.
Keith Ellison holding the book. I think probably the book written by Mark Bray. Oh, sure enough.
Look at you see Mark Bray right there. Yeah, Mark Bray. Yeah, you see his name on
Keith Ellison, who, by the way, is the sitting attorney general in the state of Minnesota.
Yep.
Holding an Antifa
Shocker.
book.
Shocker.
Holding an Antifa book.
Hey, all of you Antifa apologists who like to constantly say Antifa is just an idea, there's no organization. When you have 14 forward public facing websites because for your local chapters, you have your own handbook, you have your own initiation background checks, and a whole slew of other things that go on in your organization. You've got your Discord servers, you've got your Signal channels, you've got all of your communications networks, all of that stuff, which, by the way, we have. You are not just an idea, you are an organized terrorist organization. And when you find out that one of the original founders of the Rose City Antifa organization, which is in Portland, right? It's one of the oldest one in the country. It was founded in 2007. The two original founders of that fled to Sweden, and they're running an Antifa chapter in Sweden. There's your foreign terrorist organization connection. That's only one of them.
Don't forget, cute winter boots, guys. They told us all of this before Trump ever took office. And
That's right.
They have a well-organized funding machine, including their defense in the National Lawyers Guild and the Alliance for Global Justice, or whatever it's called.
Is that how those two terrorists in Chicago got released with no bond today? You know, the ones who drove their vehicle into federal agents and were arrested. One of them was shot because of her being armed in the commission of a terrorist attack, and she was released on no bond today.
I thought I thought the FBI or DHS, somebody came out and said that they were in FBI custody.
Well, they should be. They may have been released out of state custody, but they should absolutely be in federal custody and spend the rest of at least the next 10 to 20 years in federal custody. All right, I want to leave you guys with this. All right. This is U.S. Code 10 U.S. Code 2252. The use of militia and armed forces to enforce federal authority. He may call into federal service such of the militia of any state and use such the armed forces as he considers necessary to enforce those laws or to suppress the rebellion.
That use of the word militia there is very interesting if you put it in the context of the Second Amendment, because we are the militia as well.
Yeah,
that is very interesting.
All right, last thing I got. SK, go ahead. I'm gonna pull up something real quick, and then we'll close this out here.
No, I just love the Second Amendment. It's my favorite one.
It's the most important one.
Best one. It's the best one.
I don't know if it's
all right.
Oh, there it is.
So folks in the comments, I want you to do me a favor. All right. I know we've got a little over. We were only expecting to go an hour at about an hour and 15. At the very beginning,
We've never done just an hour ever. Not one
we've done
time
it
have we
one
done
time.
just an hour.
One
No, we
time.
didn't.
We've made it one time.
Okay, give
So
me
I
one.
know that I laid out some conditions. So if you guys in the comments can help me out here, do you think, based on the conditions that are required in order to invoke the Insurrection Act and just the limited amount of justifications that we've laid out here, do you think we've reached the threshold for an insurrection against the government for the purposes of preventing the execution of federal laws and for quelling domestic violence or unlawful obstruction? Now, you don't even have to worry about the third bullet point here because the state and local governments are involved in the insurrection against the government. You don't actually need their permission to invoke the Insurrection Act. That would be dumb to even expect to need it from the people who are actually engaging in the insurrection in the first place.
Yeah, but you don't have to meet all three of them. You only have to meet one of those, right?
Well, I feel like we've met two. Easily
I agree.
met two. Easily met two.
Here's my response. So here's a question I may have, and maybe SK, maybe you're the only one here that knows that, is if you invoke the Insurrection Act, is that nationwide or is it specific to a state or jurisdiction? Do you know?
I don't have any idea, honestly, but
We need to figure that out.
I would think that it could. Let me look it up real quick.
Because
we can get back to you on that one. Yeah.
One of the things that the president has to do is before he invokes the Insurrection Act, he also has to give an order for the insurrectionists to disperse.
Right. And
Which indicates that it could be done and most likely will be done in a very targeted way in certain areas where he has to. But by the way, folks, the Insurrection Act does not mean martial law for you idiots out there that think it does.
No.
It's not the same thing.
No. Not what it means is the National Guard is going to ensure that the federal agents are able to enforce federal law. That's it. They're not coming and raiding your houses and arresting all of you people. That's not what they're doing. They're going to make sure that ICE agents are not obstructed, are not impeded, they're not attacked, they're not firebombed with Molotov cocktails, they're not shot at, they're not rammed into the vehicles. That's all it means.
Pause comitatus still applies.
It does.
Limited forms of
limited when you
ways.
invoke.
Folks, I think we've made the case. I'm looking down here in YouTube. I can't really see. Looks like a couple over in Rumble and X agree, but YouTube is pretty unanimous. I think we've made a pretty convincing case that if Donald Trump wants or feels the need to invoke the Insurrection Act, he would be well justified in doing so. And I think we have to give the man some credit for not doing it already. That shows
I agree.
An incredible amount of restraint, and he is the worst dictator on the planet to have not done it so far.
And as far as the Insurrection Act goes, it can be invoked for a specific location, such as a city, state, or even a particular site within a state, rather than requiring nationwide application.
Yep.
Okay, excellent.
All right, last thing I have. President Trump. Can we please get some of that weaponization that you're constantly being accused of doing? Please. Can we get some freaking weaponization over here?
Right.
Well, so I agree. So we need some more weaponization of government. We're going to need the Insurrection Act so that, the government can do like one of its only actual federal functions. Like there's not many, like there's like 4 or 5 of them. One of them is immigration, period. It's not a lot. How about we stop doing all the other bullshit? Which gets me to my third request. Can we please start firing a hell of a lot of federal employees while this shutdown happens so that we can shrink the size of government? Because we know that every fascist tyrant loves to shrink governments.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it this way. I mean, if they were doing this the right way, if they were being really smart about this, they would have opened up today firing 700,000 federal employees, and tomorrow they would have activated the Insurrection Act, and the next day they would have called in the Marines, and then they would have arrested or released indictments on a bunch of grand conspirators, and they would just continue to hit these people as hard as they can, as fast as they can, so that nobody has the opportunity to get their footing underneath of them. And every time they turn around, their heads would be spinning because Trump just hit them with the next thing that's coming. But I still think we're a little too far away for that to happen. As much as I want to see action on this, I don't think we're going to see major action on some of the things that we're demanding until after the first of the year when people start really paying attention to the midterms. Honestly, personally, I think that's what they're waiting for.
I think it's so stupid. I was so furious yesterday when my entire X feed was Republican Congress, being outraged by the fact that, 8 Congress people had been spied on by the Biden administration. And I'm like, excuse me, don't pretend like you didn't know this was taking place, not only on Congress, but also US citizens that are perfectly law-abiding citizens. You've written reports about this.
So
now
on
Rumble,
Rumble,
you're going to get a very, very, very strongly worded letter from all of them. Very,
That's
very,
right.
because it impacted them. It affected them. So now it's going to be a bigger letter, bigger words, bolder type.
And an endless investigation that goes nowhere.
No, I have over on Rumble, I can see the comments. I don't know if you guys can. This is probably the coolest screen name that we have in here. Man, there's a bunch of good ones. We've got Cat Mother B. We've got A Beaverhazen 10. A Beaverhazen 10 says, do you think Antifa wants him to invoke the act? And if so, what would be the reason?
I know,
Yes,
because
they
I
do.
read it.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think the reason would be?
They want him to do that because they want to be able to say, I told you so, because this is the rhetoric that they've been running since before he won the election, is that Project 2025 says he's going to come into office, declare the Insurrection Act, declare martial law, and then we are not going to have elections anymore, and he's going to be a dictator, and he's never going to leave office.
That's insane, but that's what they think. That's what they think.
Yeah. And frankly, they believe that it gives them all the justification that they need to get in the streets and start shooting people.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. That's right. All right, folks, we are done. Folks, do me a favor. If you have not yet subscribed to all of the channels, I don't mean just the one that you're watching on. If you're on YouTube, go over to Rumble, hit the subscribe button. If you're on Rumble, go to YouTube, hit the subscribe button. SK, how's that Patriot Podcast X account coming? Do we have one yet?
Oh, do I need to start one?
I thought you said you were going to start one. Yes, SK, you need to start one.
Okay, I can do that. And
Okay.
do I need to switch my other TikTok account?
No,
Yes,
I have not yet.
Let's get live over there too.
I mean, Noem, you may have to jump in there because I couldn't figure out how to do it. It was tough. Actually, SK might be able to help us because she's a wizard when it comes to the live pieces, the live functionality over on TikTok. If not, I'm sure there's people on TikTok that can help us figure it out.
I couldn't even find my camera when we were going live. I'm like, isn't
I
there a
know.
way to shrink the frame size on the camera? I don't even know where to find it. Are you kidding me?
I
don't know
forget
how to
that
do
for
this.
the first 2 hours of our first origin meetings of this podcast, you couldn't find the mute
You were
button
on
your
mute.
mic.
I was on mute. I didn't know. It's not my mic. It's on the
I
soundboard.
know.
Listen, I can't technology. I was supposed to be a boomer. I don't know how I got here.
I don't either because us Gen Xers are supposed to have figured all this stuff out, and that's what makes us.
We build all
superior to
this
the
crap.
rest.
We build all of it. Not figured out.
We
build
build
all of
it. We are superior to all the other generations, and with
I agree
that,
with that.
we're out.
We're out. See ya. Deuces.
The bullets
Good night,
and the
guys.
punches and the riots have been flowing in only one direction for too long.
I've been trying to tell you guys this whole time how corrupt all of these things were, and here we are.
It is not our responsibility to fix something they spent years intentionally trying to destroy. Unity can only happen in a country when you have a people who agree on what the outcome should be.